Welcome all, and thanks for joining us. I'm Marley, and I'm on staff at Parents Helping Parents in San Jose, California. For over 40 years, our agency has been helping parents become their child's best advocate in the areas of education and life. We are hosting today's webinar with Achieve Kids. For over 50 years, they have been committed to creating a space for students to achieve the maximum possible self-reliance and quality of life. Today, Achieve Kids provides special education and mental health services to students with a range of developmental and emotional behavioral disabilities. These are typically students who are not able to attend a traditional classroom. Their students range in age from 5 to 22, and they have campuses in Palo Alto and San Jose. I'm joined today by Jody Wong and Maria Andrade. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to what you're going to share. Jody and Maria are going to talk for about 40 minutes, and then we'll have questions at the end and time for them to answer them. So with that, I'll let them get started.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today's topic is on just things that you can do with your child while you're at home and how to navigate this whole e-learning situation when your child is not able to sit in front of the computers. So today's will be focused mostly on students who might be working more on developmental more skills, functional life skills. And so we are going to give some examples, give you some tips and tools of how to navigate that at home. My name is Jody Wong, and just a little bit about myself. I am a lead teacher at Achieve Kids. I've been working in the field of special education for over 12 years now, and playing mostly in the role of a special education teacher, but also as a behavior specialist. I'm joined by Maria Andrade, and I will let her kind of introduce herself.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Maria Andrade. I've been working in special ed for about 10 years now. I am currently the behavior analyst at Achieve Kids, and have been working at Achieve Kids for about 8 years, doing multiple things: crisis intervention training, direct training for teachers and staff, as well as direct implementation of skill development plans and behavior support plans for these students.
So before we get started, I just want to say that for the parents who are listening and joining us, that you guys are doing an amazing job. I know you are thrown in this like everyone else without much preparation. And so I want to recognize what you are doing at home or trying to do at home, and know that we recognize that it's hard, and it's hard to try to get through day to day, trying to figure out how to, manage having your child occupied during the day, or dealing with some of the behaviors. And hopefully through this webinar today, we can provide you some tools to how to navigate all that during the day. So to get started, we're going to go through our objectives.
So our first objective would be to discuss ways to create a safe and healthy environment, establishing manageable schedules for the family, emphasize ways in which to balance out everyone's needs, creating structure using low-tech tools, strategies to help create and maintain a fun and positive environment, an environment where everyone could be engaged and learn. Discuss simple evidence-based strategies and interventions for some problem behavior that I'm sure has arisen. So safety and well-being, with everything that is going on, we forget that it is very important to take care of ourselves. So your own safety and health is important. And in order to take care of your family, you need to be able to take some time to take care of yourself. Remember that sometimes our moods are contagious, so our anxiety and our stress could be rubbing off on our kids. So take the time to eat healthy, have some exercise whenever possible, get some sleep for sure, and look for ways to start and end your day on a positive note. So as a parent, I know that that's super difficult to try to find times to make sure that we redirect our thinking and our energy. So if that is for you to wake up a little bit earlier and have that cup of coffee that you love in silence, find times for yourself, or maybe at the end of the day when everyone's asleep, just, some time for you to end on something positive and something that you may like. Establish safety and healthy habits for you and your family as well. So incorporate those healthy habits and preferences, and incorporate your kids' preferences in those habits. So a lot of the students and kiddos that I've worked with have some rigidity around meal times. So make it fun. Have some motivating things for them to have access to after. So they're more likely to try some of these healthier habits, or try some fun exercise. There is a lot of YouTube videos and apps out there to try to engage kiddos and families and just getting moving, right? Work as a team for sure. What you do is impressive. You do so much. Please communicate with the rest of your family members. Look for some support from your teachers, therapists, other service providers, to make sure that everyone's working together to support you and your kid at home. And do the best you can. That's all we can do. Remember that you aren't their teacher or their therapist. You're not their, direct service provider. You are their parent trying to put on a lot of different hats. So do the best you can. And again, reach out to other people to go ahead and support you in that planning. Keep it simple. Keeping it simple helps with making it successful. Keeping it simple, what does that mean? That means making sure that you plan accordingly to your child's needs. And sometimes that may take some brainstorming and kind of build on some of the basic skills that they already have, some of those strengths, and move up from there.
So in terms of some tools, start with schedules. Excuse me. If anything, this is probably the most essential thing to start with in structuring your child's day. Schedule your day. Schedule your day so that there's some consistency. Having something that is available so that your child knows what to expect in the day. While you're creating some of these activities, like you can give some choices to your child. Allow some time to, if you are scheduling a meal, maybe give them a choice between, do they want to make a grilled cheese sandwich versus a peanut butter sandwich? Include them into that process because they are more likely to engage in those activities when they have some choices there. Some of the resources I have available on the side are some examples of places you can go to get some schedules that are already set up. Wide Open Schools, they help you create schedules and some activities during the day. So if you are one of those families where you're asking, what can my child do? They have a lot of suggestions, and it allows you to edit those schedules as well. So if you are looking to get some ideas, but also balance it out with what you have to do during the day, Wide Open Schools has some resources there. Another resource I love going to is through commonsense.org. It's through Common Sense Media. They have these learning plans that help you schedule your day, and they keep it really simple. For a movement time, they give you some choices, go for a walk or have a dance session. They also provide some suggestions of how you can structure some of your choices. So these are some great resources to go to to kind of decide, okay, to help you figure out how to shape things according to what your needs are at home. Set goals. Set some goals as you're trying to decide what your schedule will look like. It's okay to start small. If you currently do not have anything scheduled for your child, it might be good to just focus on, okay, I kind of want to incorporate some movement into the day, so I'm going to throw that in. And it could be something simple as, going for a walk. You can set goals for the day and week and throw it into your schedule as well. But it might take some planning. You might have to take part of the end of the day and kind of decide, okay, this is what we're going to do. Or you might want to include your child into the planning process and start at the beginning of the day. Okay, this is what we're going to do for the day. Now, if you're looking for a challenge, you might want to consider your child's IEP goals. That is a way to kind of figure out, okay, these are some of the activities that we can do. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You can think about, okay, my child is working on, counting. So when we are eating, we might, want to like count how many spoonfuls, like serving spoonfuls that we're gonna place. If we're working on sorting, maybe sorting the laundry, figuring out like, we need to separate the whites from the blacks, and really like working on some of those skills that way, using your day-to-day and being creative about how you incorporate some of those skills that your child has in your IEP, and bridging that gap between what we consider academic skills with those home skills.
In terms of considering some of the consistency, taking everyone's current situation looks a little differently. So if you don't have consistent meal times and like wake up times, routine type hygiene times, try to work on those and build up to something a little bit, incorporating other activities into your schedules, because that consistency helps with structuring their day out, as well as, schedules are fun, but if you are not the type of household that likes to follow a strict schedule, this schedule could also be modified more of a to-do list and have some flexibility for you to do it at different times of the day.
So here are some examples of how schedules can look like. Like Maria said, it could be a to-do list. So in the morning, you can list things that you would like your like to get done. Afternoon, night. Now, it doesn't have to be, your schedule doesn't have to look anything like this. It could be just a list written on a board. It could be a picture of that you doodle so that your child understands, like, oh, if it's mealtime, you have a bowl and spoon so that your child knows, like, okay, breakfast time is during this time. If you want, you can, have it written out, like we have with the clocks. At 9 o'clock, we're going to do this. At 9:30, we're going to do this. It could be something simple. As you see on the bottom, it could be some pictures that are printed out and, it's just clipped. And as your child moves along with each activity, you can just pull them off as an indication that they're done. Work with what your child works best with. If it's easier just to like remove like icons, have that set up to do that. Or if it's just crossing it off, cross it off, checking it off. Sometimes, it helps us when we have our to-do list that we're crossing things off and checking it off. So it will also help your child knowing what they have to do and what they've accomplished for the day. Now let's talk about balance, how to create some of these schedules, because a lot of times you probably have other responsibilities at home, and it's trying to figure out what you're going to do during the day, and in terms of providing attention to your child, and also to do what you have to do as an adult. So say you have some work to do. Figure out what times in the days you need to focus on your responsibilities as an adult. During those scheduled times, that might be a time where you choose activities that your child can do an independent task a little bit more. So if one of their highly preferred activities is to watch a video, when you have to work, that would be the time to schedule that video. If it's to, read a book on their own, that would be the time to have them read a book on their own. So balancing it out with what you need to do with your work, whether it's a meeting or just time to, complete a chore around the house, and with what your child can do independently. Needs from other family members. Consider the needs of other family members as well. So sometimes you have to balance out, not just with one child, but some other children or adults that you have to take care of as well. Part of the reason why the schedule will work, it will kind of help you kind of pace things, how to provide attention to the different individuals that you need to provide attention to. Work with other family members to provide attention and support for your child. So there are times when you might want to pull all of them together and do an activity, or say you have this work meeting that you have to attend to. Have another family member who might be available to engage with your child while you're trying to attend this work meeting. Task demands. Consider activities that your child likes and activities that they like a lot less, and spread those activities out. So a lot of times you don't want to compact your schedule with things that your child really doesn't like to do as much. You want to spread it out so that it makes each activity a little bit more enjoyable for you and for them. If you schedule it so tightly together, your child might not throw a fuss at that first activity, but by the time you get to your second or third one, they're going to get tired, and they're going to be starting to show signs in which they don't want to do it. And so spread it out and have them do a little bit of what you might consider less preferred here, and then alternate it with something that is preferred.
Also, to add to that, there are students who hesitate to do kind of any schoolwork or any academics or anything similar to school at home, just because they've associated it with different settings. Ways to ease into that, like Jody was mentioning, is maybe starting with a number of preferred things and easing in something less preferred for a shorter amount of period, followed by preferred things, and again, something less preferred for a little bit shorter amount of period. So you could play with the amount of time that they are engaged in those less preferred things. You could do the same less preferred, say it's a worksheet. You could start with, half the worksheet, take a break to a preferred thing, do another part of the worksheet. And for the day, maybe the goal would be just to complete the one worksheet, depending on your kids' engagement level in some of these activities, and also, again, your schedule throughout the day.
Also consider your lifestyle. Find ways in which to blend what you need to do and what your child likes to do. So say that, exercising is important for your family. So you might want to have a dance session and, throw in some music that your child likes, but also incorporate things that you enjoy as well. So you can throw in music that you want, teach your child how to, do that dance move you learned when you were in college. things that will help you stay engaged and also help your child stay engaged. Take breaks. Incorporate breaks into your schedule for your sake and for your child's sake. Breaks are important because it will help you keep that balance in your own life and for your child's life. So it doesn't have to be, just, take a break, do this open-ended break. You can say it's a movement break. So we're going to choose to go for a walk, or we're going to do a dance video. You can say, oh, it's a leisure break. So these are the choices that we do. We can read a book on our own, or we can play a game. Breaks can be also scheduled, and structure can also be incorporated in that. Talking about structure, here are some examples of how you can incorporate structure into your day. Like we mentioned with the activities, provide opportunities for choices within activities. So, if it is a time you can provide some attention to your child and you want them to, focus on a specific skill, say, learn to do a chore. You might want to give them a choice of which chore they want to do, or say that, cleaning is important right now. So have your child involved in that, and have them, choose, oh, do you want to, wipe the table in the kitchen, or should we go pick up the toys in the living room? Give them opportunities to make those choices. Use task analysis. And what those are step-by-step procedures to complete a task. Just like you might follow a recipe that kind of gives you step-by-step procedure about how to bake a cake, a lot of the things that you do can be shaped in a way where there's a step-by-step procedure. Things like laundry. If you want your child to be part of that process, you can have them, learn the first step. Let's see what you can do with, sorting laundry out. Or if it's just something simple as throwing the laundry into the washer and pushing start. Work on building some skills through these steps, and then, like we said earlier, start small and then build as you go. First then, have a visual that outlines what needs to be done prior to preferred activity. So I say first then, it's basically step one, step two. If your child, does not have, does not respond well to first then, you might want to say like, oh, 1, 2, 3, these are the steps we need to do. That way your child within the schedule's time, they know what the expectations are. Token systems. Token systems are a great way to have your child stay on track. And tokens can be something simple as, little like pictures of stars. They could be stickers. They could be, dried pinto beans that you have lying around the house. Things that they know that they can associate. If I earn a certain number of these items, then I get access to a really super duper prize at the end, or an activity that they really enjoy. So structure it out so that if there are things that you would like your child to do, allow them to earn these tokens to gain access to something fun. Use timers. Timers are very helpful to indicate how long the task will be. It could be a digital timer. It could be, a timer on your phone. But use it if your child responds well to like a sound to indicate when a task is done. They can also help transition from preferred activities. So if your kid likes to be on the iPad, you might want to like set a time limit of how long they're on the iPad, so that they know when, okay, once the timer rings, we're going to move on. A note on transitions is that sometimes you do set the timer, but they have trouble just stopping immediately. So as the time gets closer to 0, you want to give them some warnings. Oh, there's 2 minutes left. There's 1 minute left, 30 seconds. All right, 0, we're going to move on. A note on timers is they only work when you follow through with the time set. So I know some of our kiddos like to negotiate. They will ask to like, oh, give me 1 more minute, 2 more minutes. I recommend that if you are going to use the timers, to make sure that you follow through with the time that is set. Otherwise, if the timers aren't an effective way for your child to transition, I would suggest not using the timer.
And just to add to what Jody was saying, so token systems are a motivation system, and the key part of a motivation system is to set clear criteria. So this could be individualized to, a 3-year-old, different developmental ages to an adult. An adult may, as long as the criteria is set. So for example, for an adult, you could say, once you complete A, B, and C, then you could get preferred thing. Or once you get 5 points, and you get points contingent on, depending on you putting the laundry in the basket, pushing the start button, putting the soap away, things like that. As long as the points or the tokens are associated with specific behavior, then you could go ahead and modify as your child or adult's needs and abilities.
Communication.
So keep your language short and simple. So what does that mean? A great way to know that it is the language that your kiddo or adult understands is their response. So take a minute to read their response, give them a few seconds to process and respond before you represent that, and be aware of that continuously throughout the different task demands, maybe throughout the day when it's preferred things. So if there's a little bit of a delay in their response, it may be because it's an unpreferred thing versus the comprehension. So just being aware of the different situations and the language you use, gauge your language on their response.
And it's okay to even have times when there's no talking. You want to make the time enjoyable as well. So if you're going for a walk, there are times when I see some therapists, pointing out every single thing that they go on a walk. But just know that, you want to also have your child learn how to, enjoy the process of going for a walk, take in the sunshine, enjoy, what you see around you. Just being able to be engaged with the activities. And, every so often you can kind of do a check-in. It's like, how are you doing? Which direction do you want to go? But it's okay not to have a lot of communication for some of your activities. If you are working on communication, encourage communication through choices. So some of our students or some of our children aren't very proficient in the language that they have. So you want to give them some choices that they can choose from so that they develop some of those vocabulary that they can utilize to communicate what they actually want to do. Most of all, have fun. explore to see what happens when you take what your child communicates to something that is not what they expect. So if your child is communicating like that they want blue, and you don't know you do know what blue is, but give them something else that is blue. See what kind of communication comes out of that. See how they problem solve from that. Have fun with it and help them understand that, like, what they can draw out from times when you don't always provide everything for them. One other thing I wanted to note is incorporate some of the things that you do day to day and have them communicate that. If you need to work on some task around the house, say, given that you're eating each day, you're probably preparing them preparing food for them. Pull them into that process as well. It might be helping them, having them, find the ingredients. And as you're working on that, you can throw in some language skills. See, how much they understand. If you're asking them to grab the, tomato sauce, do they understand where's the tomato sauce? Bread, what is that? See if they're responding to some of that. And have fun with it. Just exploring to see what your child knows. And it's an opportunity to kind of see how, what your child can understand and how much they're willing to actually communicate to you. Here are some sample visuals. We talked about the first, then next, the multi-step instructions. These are some structured ways in which you can kind of shape it around. Again, like your schedules, you can draw it out, you can write it out depending on the modality that works for your child. When you're having an activity, you can indicate the number of times or number of turns that they need to take, or you can have it based on a time schedule. If your child is working on yes and no, having that visual available. The other two character ones are examples of token systems. So if your child likes something like Mario Brothers, I've created something where like, oh, okay, they can choose their preferred activities. Now the stars and the mushrooms are things that they will earn to get access to that activity. With the Blues Clues, I had one student that loves Blues Clues. So they would earn each individual piece to build a puzzle to create Blues Clues. And once all of Blues Clues shows up, then they have access to that activity. Environment. We're gonna take a look and make choices that are available, the only ones available. So if you're providing choices for your child, you want to make sure that the item activity available for your child is out of sight if possible. That means moving it to another room or putting it in the closet. So you don't want that to be a distraction to the environment. Create an engaging environment. Rotate through preferred activities, preferred items, because once your child gets that preferred activity all the time, they might not be interested in it. Introduce new toys or activities. When you're trying to see what they like, you might want to introduce new ones. And set times, limits, and expectations around the use of highly preferred activities. Again, some times in which your child does not have so much time on a preferred activity that eventually they get bored of it.
Also to add, expect, if your child is used to being on the iPad because of while we're trying to figure out this distant learning time, they had access to a lot of preferred stuff without a lot of boundaries around the activities in terms of time limits, expect a little bit of problem behavior and some pushback once you start setting limits. It's important to plan for that, not necessarily avoid it, but more plan for some of that pushback and problem behavior, because we do want to set limits to be able to move forward with some of the other activities and tasks that you want to do throughout the day.
You also want to consider having a quiet space in your home. Now, this space is a space where highly preferred toys, technology, food, items, activities are not available. This is a space where you take a break, a space for you to regroup. And this is the space that everyone in the household knows, when I'm here, this is a break time. It could be a space for yourself, it could be a space for your child, but it's a space just to have some quiet. You might want to consider making a break box with familiar items like sensory toys and books that individuals in that space can actually engage in on their own without being disruptive. It's a space where they can it's a space where they can regroup and get back to that baseline. Stay positive. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the session, it's going to be hard. You will have days when it's hard, but you want to find things, small things that you can celebrate. You might want to consider at the end of the day to journal about one thing you did well so that you can end your day on a positive note. Reinforcement. Find things that are reinforcing for you, reinforcing for your child, because in order to keep things going for the day, you want things to be enjoyable. Set realistic expectations. So know that, like we mentioned before, that you are not your child's usual therapist, teacher. So understand what can happen in the home, and really start small and set some expectations that you think your child can do. Work on their strengths. Set some goals in which you utilize some of their strengths. Catch your kids being good. When you're staying positive, ignore some of the low-level behaviors when possible, and on average, praise more frequently than reprimand, because you want your child to recognize, oh, this is what I'm doing well. And when there's that positivity, it becomes infectious. Praise should be enthusiastic, genuine, descriptive, preferred, and varied as much as possible. So you don't want to always use like, good job, good job, good job. You also want to, give them a hug when they do something really well, especially when it's something that's challenging for them. And being specific, you used the spoon on your own. That is awesome. Have fun with it. Incorporate things that you enjoy and your child enjoys so that you guys can stay positive during the day. And most of all, forgive yourself, because there are days when it's going to be hard, and things might not go as you expect, but be willing to forgive yourself and for what doesn't go well, and kind of consider what you can do to change things for the next day, because the next day is another day.
Again, so let's celebrate the small stuff. This guy is super excited. He ate spaghetti while wearing a white t-shirt and didn't get sauce on it. That's what's up. Woohoo. Somebody else in the chat says, in terms of celebrating the small stuff, got out of bed today. So yes, the day got started already on the right foot. I mean, you're out of bed. Good job. All right, so we're talking about structure, balance, all these good things. So what happens when my plan doesn't go to plan, right? It's okay. It's all right. You guys still have a lot of opportunities to capture some of those natural teaching moments. So things didn't go to plan. I didn't get everything off my to-do list, but I could still work on certain skills or strengthen some other already kind of, splinter skills. So capture that during the day when you are working on chores, some of the functional, more vocational type skills. You're putting laundry away, teaching them how to sort or match socks. Maybe that wasn't on your schedule, but it's something that you're doing that you could incorporate your child in. So you're still able to capture and teach throughout the day, for sure. Manage your emotions. It's a lot easier said than done, for sure, especially with so much that has been going on. Have a space or activity that will allow you to momentarily reset. Sometimes it'll be maybe taking a longer shower or something as short as taking a couple of deep breaths, regrouping, regrounding yourself, and kind of looking at the picture and it's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do next. So find ways that help you out to kind of regroup and move forward, especially if the day isn't going your way at, early in the morning. You have the rest of the day. So this is really key. Utilize coping strategies. It goes with some of the ways that we talked about managing your emotions. Also, coping strategies for your child. A lot of kids are working on deep breathing or counting down, looking at preferred books, coloring, kind of calming activities in the moment when they're feeling a little bit anxious or starting to get upset. So if things continue to escalate, make sure you focus on safety. Some tips during these times: try to talk a lot less. Again, gauge your talking depending on the response of your kiddo. As I talk more, they cry louder. Okay, that probably means they want some space. So maybe I should talk a little less. Or they keep looking at me, asking me questions. Should I engage? Should I not? You would have to definitely read the situation. I'll just read a few of these. Use some visuals. That will help with minimizing the discussion during this time, especially for kids who get even more agitated as you speak more to them. It just may sound like more demands that they don't want to do, even though you're just trying to help, right? This is not the time to try to teach a skill. Focus just on the safety and the de-escalation. Make sure that preferred items, activities are not offered during this time. We don't want to inadvertently teach that this is the way that they get preferred items. And one last thing, if you are going to give in at the start. That happens sometimes. We have to pick our battles. You guys know your children best and know that their tantrums could go a little bit longer. So if this is this is one of those days where, hey, I just don't have time for this, let's give in at the earliest signs, because we don't want to reinforce the really big tantrum. We want to cut it off in the beginning, maybe set a quick expectation. It's like, hey, count to 3, good job, high five, boom, here you go, this thing that you want much earlier on. Again, because these days will happen. Some strategies and interventions. So stop, redirect, and reinforce. So what does that mean? We talked about withholding attention from some of the lower level, more annoying behavior. If doing a lot of verbal prompts is not redirecting them, we can go ahead and physically stop them, redirect them to the behavior we want them to engage in, and then go ahead and give them attention and praise and all that love for doing what you want them to do. For example, the other day, my oldest son, was scratching his fork on his plate. In my head, I am screaming, stop doing that, that's annoying. But instead, we want to reach over. I just reached over to his hand, make sure he used his fork the right way, redirect it in that way, and then just let him know, hey, this is how you use a fork. Because that could go a whole lot of different ways. So that's just a simple example, but kind of keep that in mind when you're trying to use this intervention. It's also important to set clear expectations, discuss different behaviors to engage in, and discuss and implement predetermined consequences. So for a lot of our kids, some of the uncertainty or the unexpectedness of consequences could increase the tantrum or the problem behavior. It just causes a lot of anxiety. So it's important to let them know what you expect from them, all the different behaviors that are appropriate that you want them to engage in, and the positive consequences that will come from that, all the good stuff that will come from that, as well as, when you do this problem behavior, you engage in tantrums, or, tease your brother, or, take a toy from someone, then this is a consequence that will come from that. Making sure that everyone is clear about that will help with maintaining the consistency across the intervention, and also let your kid know exactly what you expect and help create some set expectations around that. Sometimes we could use role plays to model the behaviors you expect to see. I'm sure a lot of parents I've heard their kids benefit from kind of ad-lib type social stories, or maybe debriefing after an incident where you go ahead and touch on all these things. And that would be also really beneficial. Other strategies that you can do is a timeout procedure for, again, some of those tantrums and behaviors that you just can't quite ignore or stop and redirect in the moment. Make sure that when you are using this procedure, the area that the timeout is in is non-reinforcing. It's for sure safe and away from others. Make sure that everyone's in communication. So both parents and the child or the adult is clear understanding of what behaviors will be addressed with this procedure, with the timeout. And if possible, again, role play and rehearse it. And use concise, neutral statements. So that goes with kind of limiting your language, being really clear and concrete. A lot of times when at this point that we're reacting, some of the kiddos have already engaged in so many behaviors that maybe we're using a lot of language because it's a bit of an emotional reaction. Some of that language may be lost to them. So again, try to stay concrete. And make sure that they also discuss when the time out is over. So how long am I going to be here? What am I expected to do to go ahead and regroup and be with everybody else and have access to my fun things? So some of the clear expectations could be, have a calm body, quiet voice, or, have a calm body and quiet voice for, a predetermined amount of time. It's important to note that timeout is timeout from reinforcement. So we've talked about having a quiet area, maybe a de-escalation area, a calming space. If because of the environment that you're currently in, you can't think of a spot where this would happen, remember that the first thing to do is to remove all of the reinforcing items. That could be toys, the sibling that they love to play with, things like that. So timeout could be wherever they're at. Again, it's timeout from reinforcement. So you don't have to necessarily have to structure a whole area around it if you're unable to, which is it allows for the flexibility for the individual families.
So here are some additional resources that we put together that might be helpful for your child that you can go utilize. These are things that include self-care tips for yourself as a parent, but things that I myself found was useful for our student or our kiddos with more of the severe disabilities, feel free to, we're going to send this PowerPoint out and make that available to you guys. And feel free to explore. We have some additional resources for Spanish speakers, so there are some there as well. In addition to this, we'll also be putting out a list of activities that will help you kind of consider what your day-to-day might look like. Say you have things that you have to do around the house, how that can be incorporated into your day so that it's you're providing learning opportunities for your child in addition to doing what you have to do.
And we could definitely stay longer to answer some questions.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
some popped up in the chat, so some really good ones popped up in the chat. So
yeah, so I just put in the chat, we had intended for this to be a 60-minute webinar. We do have the ability to go longer. So we will keep taking questions probably for at least until 1:15. And then if you have to leave and you want us to answer a question, just send me an email and I put the information there and we'll respond via email to your question. Okay, so with that, I've got a little poll that I'm going to ask people to just respond to while we're doing Q&A. So you'll see that, so you can just answer that as you will, but let's go into questions. Okay, so maybe take this one. So it's Maria is absolutely right about resistance in setting limits on things that my child had access to without limits before. And the example is, because he'd already had a full day at school, the iPad was more or less always available at home. We didn't have much trouble putting the iPad away or aside for various tasks and games previously, but it took over 3 weeks to work into school at home without the iPad during this time. It was very difficult to turn it into a reward when he'd had full access previously. So can you talk a little bit about, yeah, there's probably some of that going on.
Oh, for sure. And I think part of it is introducing new things. So if you're able to find new apps to then make that interesting, and that could be the reward. I really like how she mentioned that they were, even though it was hard, they were still working on setting those limits. So if you want to look for different things other than the iPad to make a reward, that will be great. But there are a ton of apps out there that could be used as rewards as well. So you could still use the iPad with novel things in it. Jody, do you have anything to add?
Just like we were talking about, since the iPad is something that is highly reinforcing for your child, blend it in with, if possible, some of the things that he might have to do with school. Those learning, like Maria said, there's those apps out there that allows some academics to be blended into, utilizing it with the iPad, and schedule break times in which they can have access to the iPad, completing if you do this, if you finish your schoolwork or whatever tasks you give them, then schedule some time, but provide some structure around that.
Yeah, and it will continue to be a bit challenging. Other options you may have is to use iPad just for learning, and give them a lot of other options that are not iPad, and kind of force the choices of other activities and exploring other things. It may be tough for the first week or so, and then later kind of reintroduce the iPad once you probe some new interests.
Great. How about this one? So taking walks. I need tips to support wearing a mask, not touching things, and maintaining social distance of 6 feet. My student does not like me grabbing her hand when we pass people. She doesn't like to go outside, so I wanted it to be as fun as possible. Any tips?
Start small. See if your child, especially when you're taking walks. See. I'm thinking about the mask. See if you can wear that at home. If you can, like post one. Stick something on the mask that is fun for your child. Do things that will encourage them to kind of, oh, maybe it is interesting. You might have to do little steps at a time. There are, I think one of the resources I included in there includes a whole list of social stories that you can go over with your child so that they understand, oh, given the current situation, I need to wash my hands more. Or, when I'm coughing, I need to cough into my elbow versus, my hand or open sneeze.
Yeah, and since they don't have the skill down yet, and it is dangerous going out there without those precautions, then like Jody said, practice in a more controlled environment, which would be home. And if you do go slightly on a walk, make sure that it's really short, so then they could build up on desensitizing and putting that mask on and kind of grasp the reason behind it, for sure.
Okay. This question is, my child is extremely oppositional and does not want any school stuff at home and home stuff at school. I think you kind of talked to this in the presentation, but maybe just, any short suggestions you have.
Building momentum is really key for trying to not make sure you don't engage in a power struggle and make things still kind of fun for your kiddo, and ways to do that, to build momentum in the direction that you want it to go is, like I mentioned, is give a few demands that they've already mastered and are, slightly preferred, not necessarily reinforcing or highly preferred, so they can build up on, and that build up until you present the less preferred demand. So it's typically for building momentum, you'll present two to five mastered or preferred prompts or tasks before presenting something less preferred. And with the less preferred, set smaller criteria and expectations on the completion of that, and then build on that.
Okay. Here's one. Pulling them into things is a very good idea. My student is 18 years old and pretty clever. The busier I am, and he can always tell, the harder it is to pull him into things. He knows I need, for example, dinner done by a certain time. He simply resists coming into the activity or gets silly, just resists. So reward systems are in order and planning ahead so as to leave enough time. But invariably, there's so much to do, he gets out of things because of time constraints. Any helpful thoughts?
Start small. I've worked with kiddos where, like, say you're cooking and, it's time to prepare that lunch or whatever you need to prepare. And your child is basically resistant into even coming into the room. Bring it to them. It's like, oh, can you just like pour the this can of corn into the bowl for me? Start small, and then as they get used to, oh, okay, every time there's a can that is open, I need to put it in the bowl. Move them into the environment closer to where it's supposed to take place.
Great. Somebody is asking, people are asking about the presentation, so we can email this to anybody that would like it. Just simply email me, Marlee, MARLEE, at PHP, Parents Helping Parents, php.com, and we'll send this out to you. Somebody was saying that you had a social story that you shared at Achieve Kids that they thought might be interesting to redistribute. Is that?
Yes. We have multiple social stories that we shared, but we can put a list together for you guys and also share that out when we share these resources out with the presentation.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any other questions? Put them in the Q&A box, and we have a couple minutes we can still get to them. But if not, we hope that you enjoyed the presentation and that you learned some useful tips and tools. Thank you, Jody and Maria, for joining us. It's been really super helpful. And for those watching, just check our website, www.php.com. We have many upcoming online events, and we have COVID-19 resources, including things for learning at home and distance learning. So if there aren't any other questions, I'll thank everyone for watching and say goodbye for now. Thank you.
Thank you.